fourth place playoffs. I started with the hello, but I just thought that it wasn't good enough. But anyways, back into this draft. What do you think? So we saw a weapon battle coming out from BrenEsports, and it gave Infamous, one of the top teams on the charts, a little trouble.
Yeah, I think the weapon battle will definitely be a consideration for BrenEsports. They definitely want to consider it, but we're going to see a Lance ban again. I would expect Grace, given that they decided to ban the Glaive. I think Grace is just the smartest pick, and it works quite well in the draft. You don't want to give too much away, but they're going to go Idris. What do you think of that pick, Luxuria?
Well, I'm not surprised if BrenEsports now on the red side, of course, Nebulae on the blue side. They go for the petal immediate pickup. If not, then they will secure maybe that of Grace. Grace is still open, still on the table. And with that, they can ban out one of the majors like that of Celeste. And that has been the running pattern whenever they want to go for that weapon petal pickup. So I'm not expecting anything more. Catherine is on the table. Catherine has not seen quite a lot of pickups recently. But of course, Grace, one of the heroes that can actually change the meta, or rather change the tides of battle. But when we are talking about not being picked up, BrenEsports immediately picking up that Catherine.
Yeah, I think the petal first pick would be interesting. I don't think there's any need necessarily to straight up pick petal. I'm very surprised that that Catherine was preferred to Grace. I think that if they don't ban it away, it will most likely be picked up by Nebulae, the Grace that is. So that would be a smart ban, but also, as you said, they like to ban their Celeste and Scarf, and they're going to ban the Taka. So maybe they want to play Celeste or Scarf this game, but of course Taka does really well against Weapon Petal. It's interesting how it works, because CP Petal counters Taka, but Taka counters Weapon Petal. So maybe, as you said, that could be in preparation for the pick for BrenEsports.
Definitely as well. But as for the side of Nebulae, we saw some very strong performance coming up from them when they were up against that of Nebulae going up against Impunity. They put up quite a performance, and we actually thought, or rather from the desk itself, we actually thought that Nebulae may have stood a chance. But now that and the Scarf is being picked up, it will be an easy Celeste pickup just to chain the two stunts together for the side of BrenEsports. However, we also know banning out the Scarf definitely opens up the opportunity for BrenEsports to pick up that potential petal, in which they have been showing to just own and ride with. However, we will be seeing that of a Black Feather at this point in time. Hopefully, Nebulae will pick up that of Celeste.
I don't think that Nebulae are going to pick Celeste, because the reason they banned Scarf was to bait out a Celeste pick, just so they could counter it with their own Black Feather. And now BrenEsports has done exactly the same thing. They picked up Black Feather, and there's no reason for Nebulae to go for Celeste. It's countered by Black Feather. It's reasonably well countered by Catherine. The core pick does make a lot of sense. Now, they could go Arden or maybe a Finn, but I still think Grace is the smart pick for Nebulae. There aren't many counters left. They could go for a Sky, Christopher Sky with a lane weapon Black Feather to try and counter that Cruel, but that would be risky against Idris. Idris does really well against Sky, especially Crystal Power. And I think, that was a really good draft from Nebulae. They're going to go the Arden instead. Now, it's possible that BrenEsports could try double protect the carry comp, maybe picking up a jungle. I guess there aren't that many junglers left because Lance has been taken off the table. They could go for something like a Fortress would work well with this Black Feather, but then it's like a dive comp against a dive comp. So it's really risky. They're going to stick with their petal. They're comfortable on weapon petal. We asked some questions about whether BrenEsports had practiced it, and they clearly have. Really not interesting to see that they put so much emphasis on this petal in every draft.
Yep, and on top of that as well, Petal going up against that of Cruel will definitely be a very good pickup for the side of BrenEsports. But this time, maybe we'll not see a weapon Petal, because you have the Black Feather in that of lane, or they might just switch out their roles as well. So that way, but I personally think that a Crystal Petal will just do so much better into that of Cruel, and of course the CP Idris as well, because you have just a little more tankiness from your minions, and with that, granted, you don't have the range that Trampoline provides you, but honestly, a lot of the damage will be coming out from the nibbling the minions do.
Yeah, I have to disagree. I think Weapon Petal would be a lot better because CP Idris absolutely destroys Crystal Power Petal. Because unless you get a ridiculous early game snowball, which is quite hard to do at the moment, especially against an Arden who can just keep giving Crawl a barrier and Crawl can keep running away. I think if it gets to around 15 minutes, then the Idris Chakram will take out all your minions and then you deal no damage, so Idris can just focus on the Black Feather. I think that it would be really smart to swap roles, put Weapon Petal in lane to try and farm up evenly with Idris, and you'll put your CP Black Feather in the jungle just because Crystal Petal really does struggle against Idris.
Yep, that would work as well. But like said, BrenEsports, they can actually go for that snowball against that of Cruel if they are going to run that CP Petal. But like you say, the Weapon Petal is just much better going into a Weapon Idris. A CP Idris. But all in all, I must say a CP Idris and a Cruel plus an Arden would work a little better as compared to in the late game, in which BrenEsports actually excelled in. I mean, we saw their past performances. They just do so much better in the late game as compared to the early game aggression. They just really want to play passive in that of the early game, farm up, get their items, and then destroy you with maybe a Kraken steal, and from then just snowball you in that late game. We cannot quite consider it snowball, but all in all, that is how BrenEsports have been playing.
Yeah, they do tend to favour their late game composition, so I would be very surprised if they bring out the Crystal Petal. Maybe that is their plan, to tempt you into thinking that they're going to go very late game with CP Black Feather and with Weapon Petal, and then switch it up, bring Black Feather into lane as weapon, try and kill Idris early, and then snowball the CP Petal.
Yeah, but thank you for that. As we are jumping onto the fold, let's invite iRequest Duo back as he talks about the game.
Okay, yes, thank you for that, Mini Miter, and of course to you as well, Luxuria, who I'll be casting alongside for this third place matchup between Nebulae and BrenEsports. But I've got something to say indeed to start off with. We're seeing Sync 1 on the Black Feather and Mr. Jim on the Petal this time. So, I know you were talking about whether BrenEsports have practiced this, but have both Mr. Jim and Cincy1 practiced the Weapon Petal?
I mean, Weapon Petal, it's one of those heroes that you can just slap Sorrow Blade and double Tornado Trigger and you do a whole lot of damage. And honestly, if you were to talk about practice-wise, I can consider that both players would have practiced the very meta Weapon Petal, because I mean, if you go over to Southeast Asia, you start ranking there, you would understand what I'm trying to talk about. Very little, a lot of damage being put out by Mr. Jim on this Weapon Petal, but they will just disengage and will go back to lane.
I do worry for the side of Nebulae with that Cruel pickup if they're going to be able to find the targets they want. I mean, in the late game, once they've got the CC coming out from the Gauntlet and from House Heart on the side of Cruel, they might be able to lock down some targets and pick up some kills. But in early game, I do worry for Cruel. Of course, he has the perks of Shadows and Power Me. That's going to help him enough, and the Dead Man's Rush. I just think going up against a Petal and a Black Feather, who, of course, Black Feather not having the escape early on without the Rose Offensive, but Petal is going to have its trampoline, and is, even with the Bramblethorn seeds being put down, it's going to be quite a bit of a pain to get away from.
Well, definitely.
Or to catch on to, I should say. My bad.
Yeah, so definitely, but we are now seeing the Weapon Petal being in lane, which means that Mr. Jim can easily just get his Sorrow Blade into Double Tyrant's Tornado Trigger and just put out a lot of damage, and that his range actually outscales. I think it is a attack range of 7 with a maximum trampoline, which means he actually outscales in terms of attack range all the heroes on the foes, and that is why Weapon Petal is just so strong. And with the minions that acts like a pseudo defense, pseudo wall for you, it will be difficult for, say, a Weapon Idris to hit you, but we will know, and we might see the CP Idris coming out, or the side of Nebulae would actually risk running double weapon power, which is highly unlikely.
Yeah, I do think it's a bit unlikely to go for that double weapon power kind of comp. We are more than likely going to see a CP Idris come out on Truffy's. So Yeah, with that, I think it's just they haven't gone back to base yet. You can see Sing on 2,197 gold, and they are going to make that first back now. 33 CS, doing very well for the CS gang. 10 per minute, more than enough there. And looking over to the side of BrenEsports, where you've got Mr. Jim Sing back slightly on 26. He should be able to catch up after getting this wave here, however. And in that mid game, I think we saw in the middle of the map, we did see Sync1 take that nutrient away from this crew, and they're going to try and steal more at this point. They don't get it, however. Trophies has gone down to try help them out, and you see Truffless as well there on the Arden. But right now, Bren, you know, they seem kind of comfortable where they are. Oh, it's Sync1 gonna be missing one of those on points and gets punished for it. First blood, and that's the case where, yeah, you can't escape from Pro if you don't have that Rose offensive just yet.
Definitely. And one thing as well, very good aggression coming out from that of BrenEsports, but like said earlier on, they just do not excel in that early aggression game that they are trying to put out at this point in time. What BrenEsports really want to do at this point in time is just farm up, get the items, like said before, and just push the advantage whenever they get one in that of the late game. So honestly, you know, they should not just go for aggressive plays, because IronBuildsEye has got a tension bow at this point in time, will put out a lot of damage with the DMR, and of course the smite as well. So that is one thing that maybe BrenEsports have to consider, going for the aggressive maneuvers, Mr. Jim, however, going for the turret push.
Yep, and IronBuildsEye picking up that tension bow might be able to help them out there a bit more for the damage, where they actually landed onto Mr. Jim, followed up by the smite, but they go in fairly deep and almost fall to Sync1, who got quite a few stacks there with the broken hearts, and it now have to back out of here. Mr. Jim actually fairly low, going to go to the backs with Sync1, and this is a fairly common rotation we've been seeing happening. You know, the laners going there and even taking the farm for themselves, but Sync1 going to go and take those two back camps. I'm surprised, because right now is Mr. Jim we are seeing up in the lane. However, they want to get enough CP items onto Sync1 that has that burst damage to kind of counter-react with the Cruel that's diving in.
Yep, honestly, IronBuildsEye on this Cruel can really just go onto lane right now, just apply very, very big pressure onto that of BrenEsports, but if they are not doing that, then they are giving the entirety of, you know, BrenEsports to just slowly farm up, because we all know CP Blackfeather really wants that level 8 firstly, and on top of that, with that Shatter Glass, he will be putting out a lot of damage, but a lot of damage onto Mr. Jim.
Yep, and we do see that in return right now, because of course there's a Shatter Glass over on Trophies as well, so just a lot of damage all across the board on both teams. I'm just surprised we haven't seen more fights breaking out so far, just a fair bit of poke and, you know, rotations coming through once again by BrenEsports, and until we see more pressure come out by Nebulae, or maybe even Bren themselves, but right now it's definitely looking like Nebulae wants to be putting down more pressure up in this lane. I don't think we'll see anything happen, and there's a From House High is going to miss, however, and they're just going to back off from that.
Yep, and I mean, we have been talking about a lot of times how BrenEsports really want to be passive and just play that slow game, however.
Yep, slow game, but looks like with Sync1 diving in deep onto IronBuildsEye is going to be able to get out turret range, turn around, and pick it up again. And then it looks like they're not going to be able to get any more than that, but I think Bren should be happy with that kind of trade-out, because now they're able to go to the back jungle of Nebulae and take all the farm that was weighing there. They might even get a Crystal Sentry with it.
Yep, they will definitely push this Crystal Sentry, but all in all, a rather stagnated fight. However, we do see BrenEsports having definitely the better macro control and of course the map control. If they are unable to push the turret, they immediately went into the back lines of Nebulae, remove any sorts of farm that, you know, IronBuildsEye can possibly have. However, their first turret will definitely go down to Trophies or the CP Eaters.
Yep, Trophy's going to pick that up and be putting down a lot of return damage onto Guessing. IronBuildsEye trying to find the kill. They managed to get, but they're going to fall in return, and Sync1 now going to jump onto Trophies, but taking a fair amount of damage without that on point to to get before fight health, and there's going to be the Vanguard to get trophies out there safely. One needs to be careful. There are full broken heart stacks, but you can see that just one outgoing chakram is enough damage. Maybe if the full thing hits him, Sync 1 will fall, but Mr. Jim looking for a return turret air. He has the escape with the trampoline, so he should be safe. Sync 1, however, with one Rose offensive, but if you don't use it at the right time, you are going to fall. They need to be careful. From Household, not up yet, and Nebulae going to back out this one. So a trade in turrets, it kind of put BrenEsports even with them because they previously took the Crystal Sentry from the side of Nebulae that just returned into the jungle there, and they got some gold out of it because we look, they're slightly ahead, about 1.5k, where they're sitting at 18.7 of 17.5 for the side of Nebulae. So not too far. It can go swing around very quickly, and Gold Miner is one of those objectives that could do just that.
Very defensive gauntlet that came out from Arden just now, setting his gauntlet down for 100 seconds cooldown, and that is something that, you know, BrenEsports can really just capitalize on. However, we do see them playing relatively passive. They wanted to go for the gold mine, but spotted both Iron Nebulae and Trophies out in that tri-brush over there, guessing, going in for the Merciless Pursuit.
Yes, to get the stun off, however, Trophies actually got the dash and got the distance to get away from the rest of BrenEsports, and we can see Guessing doing an alright job there with 10 Merciless Pursuit stacks, about almost 10 minutes in. Could be looking for a bit more, would be nice, but at least if you're going 1 per minute, that's going to add up by the end game, hopefully.
Well, yep, definitely. So Sync 1, or rather the entirety of BrenEsports, can really just push the gold mine at this point in time. Take it just further, the gold lead that they currently have. They have about a 1.5k gold lead, like you said and you mentioned before. It is not much all in all, but honestly, coming into this game, I mean, they have got very, very good objective taking, and they've got
there's from House High onto Mr. Jim. Crucible followed up, and there's going to be the Fountain as well, just to get him out there live, and it will be enough for BrenEsports to back out there, but Sync 1 doesn't really want to do it at first. It's going to get a bit of damage onto Iron Nebulae, then use Rose Offensive out of there, but be able to follow through with the rest of the fight. There's going to be a gauntlet onto Sync 1, is going to stun him out, and Trophies will be able to get the return kill. Might get more, but no, does not have the boots up. I think used them before just to chase down onto kill for Sync 1 and didn't have enough mobility to catch up to the rest of the team. But you can see these teams going fairly even at the moment.
Yep, and as we all know as well, Trophies on this Idris, generally he'll play it like very much like a caster hero. He goes in with, he throws out his chakram, and honestly from that, if it hits, he'll continue on the team fights. Otherwise, he will just back off. As we see in a lot of team fights, Trophies will generally stay relatively healthy all in all. So it is just down to Iron Nebulae, and of course, Truffless on that Arden to just soak up as much damage as as humanely possible. Of course, it will be no problem for that Arden since he is a tank of the team, but as for Iron Nebulae, without enough defense and enough sustain that his build can offer, it will be a tough choice. And Trophies once again.
Oh my, I just have to say, Mini Mitre, if you're watching, just look at Trophies' build. He's going for the double Shatterglass start. And I mean, we talked about Shatterglass, whether it's a first item pickup. I say yes, Mini says no, but right now we see from House High onto Mr. Jim once again. They're able to trampoline out there, and I mean, it's real tough, and this is why I meant for Cruel in the late game to just get onto anyone. And BrenEsports are going to turn around, get the return kill onto the Arden, a low poke damage onto Trophies. Now that's the problem with Trophies' build. If they are not in control of the fight and Trophies isn't safely on the backline, he has no defense whatsoever. Double Shard Glass, one heavy prism, and a piercing shard, going to be building more towards that broken myth second. But right now, he can do a lot of damage to the likes of Black Feather and Mr. Jim, who don't have much defense either.
Yep, we saw this coming up from Truffy's, I think in yesterday's game as well. Double Shatter Glass into Broken Myth, and summing up the entire build will be an alternating current. And that is something that we saw a lot from Truffy's, at least. Like I say, you know, he is relying on Truffy's, Truffless and Iron Will Die on that Cruel and Ardent to just soak up damage, and from there he just throw out his Chakram, put out as much damage as possible, and hopefully win the team fights with Guessing X going in with the Merciless Pursuit.
Yep, and there's going to be the engage coming out from the side of Bren. They're pushing Nebulae back for now, but you can see Cruel seeing him wait half health in that brush. They might be better to just back off from the fight completely, but he's going to hold his ground, and yeah, BrenEsports just going to turn away from this one. Might be looking for that Crystal Sentry down there, but I think they're calling it a bit too risky right now, and might just steal some of this farm away if they can. You see Mr. Jim trying to there.
Yep, and it's really, really difficult, however, for Iron Will Die to just soak up damage like I've been mentioning, only because of the range that Petal has, and the amount of poke as well. We see the basic attacks of Petal has got a range of 7. That is a lot of range, and like said, he outranges, or rather Petal outranges any hero on the fold at this point in time, even Baron, if I remember correctly. And with that range itself, it is very, very difficult for Crow to just jump onto Mr. Jim, soak up the basic damage coming up from Mr. Jim, and of course to have to deal with Sync 1 as well. And Sync 1 can easily rose offensive into the backlines, take out Trophies as well. So, you know, in this particular lineup, we saw from yesterday when Nebula were up against... Oh, sorry, yeah, Nebulae was up against... in Elite 8, if I'm not wrong. They pulled out the same thing. Elite 8 has the Diacom, but because of the amount of CCs that his team has, right, Nebulae has, Trophies was kept safe in every single team fight. Even now we see...
Well, we do see the Gauntlet go down, and without an Echo, I'm really not... I'm not too sure about that Gauntlet usage, because you were talking before about how hard it is for Iron You Died to get onto a target, and with the House Heart on its own, it's just not enough. As we see there, it lands onto Sin C1, but the damage output coming out from the rest of the team, they just shut them down, taking down Iron You Die and Truffless. Meanwhile, Truffy's just on that backline where he should be, but in this case with no front line to really put any kind of ground between him and the enemy, and just has to back off as the first Kraken of the match is taken 15 minutes 26 seconds into the game. And yeah, BrenEsports just looking really strong. If the side of Nebulae want to do anything about this, they're going to have to chain the CCs they have together, because when you throw out, if you're able to put the Gauntlet down around them, then they shouldn't be able to escape from that area, and Cruel has a good kind of range and field to play with it.
Yep, but then again, they can't quite afford that as well. 531 crit damage on Mr. Jim onto that turret. But why I say they cannot quite afford the what is that called? The Echo. Only reason because they really need to soak up as much damage as possible. So Trophies will try to tank up for the boyfriend over there, but from Hell's Heart landing on Petal.
Yep, and that's the thing. You can't just be throwing these from House Hearts out on their own, especially if you're not following up at all with them. And I really don't know what Nebulae can do here as the Kraken and the whole team of BrenEsports push into the base. There's going to be a Gauntlet. It does catch out Guessing and Mr. Jim in there, but Mr. Jim just continues to go for the turret, loses his life for it, but he's going to be happy enough with that Sin C1, going to fight it out with Iron You Die, realizing that maybe on his own, without this pedal, that weapon power pedal was actually putting in a lot of work. Going to turn around, wait for the stacks to wear off, not able to find Iron You Die though, as the Broken Heart stacks also falling off in return, and the chase is on. There's a merciless pursuit to stop Iron You Die, however, and they're continuing to chase them down. Sync 1 going to turn around with it on point just to scare him away, let him know what's up, and they're going to back out of that, because now Nebulae, they're lost without a turret. Black Feather can wall jump with the Rose Offensive, or I guess wall pass through, whatever you want to call that. Mr. Jim can actually jump over the wall physically with the trampoline, and either way, that's a lot of damage going over towards that crystal. You talked about before, we saw how much damage Mr. Jim's doing to these objectives.
Yep. There you go. And honestly, they don't really have to risk it and go for that backdoor. However, I might just want to take that back because Bren Chong, they are very well known for the Bren Bush, right? That was when I was casting with Arcerai, and they just camped for their dear life for that opportunity. But a fight might just break out right now, or maybe
Mr.
not.
Jim. Come on, do it, Mr. Jim. No, there's the flare. We'll catch out Mr. Jim. I was thinking maybe while the rest of BrenEsports fight up in the lane, Mr. Jim could get around the back and he might still be looking for that opportunity. I believe he might, because you see him seeing Wang patiently over here at the back where the back spawns are, but Nebulae are onto it. They know that it's too much of a possibility. But right now, you're right. BrenEsports could just try force out a fight or take a second Kraken now that Kraken is up on the fold, which would potentially force a fight because Nebulae have to come to stop it happening.
Yep, I don't want to say this is a very one-sided match because there was like 4 kills going over to the side of Nebulae. But honestly, at this point in time, there is really nothing much that Nebulae can do. Unless, of course, you know, someone finds an Atlas, Mr. Jim, kills Mr. Jim immediately, chain the CCs like you mentioned, and maybe BrenEsports, or rather Nebulae, would stand the chance. However, if they are unable to find those CCs, Angry will die in a very, very uncomfortable position at this point in time. Mr. Jim as well, still looking for that backdoor.
Yep, you can see Mr. Jim sitting down there. Doesn't know that Scout Trap is there, however. Maybe he does. It's gonna pop it anyway, and Kraken is pushing through. They rarely could just push in with Kraken. If they overwhelm the enemy at this point, they should be able to do it. Kraken should have at least half health by Crystal, but BrenEsports, the full team, did not commit to this one, and Nebulae making this Kraken burn down quite quickly with Sync 1 on that backline. It's going to be Truffy's to jump onto them, trying to do work, but Mr. Jim coming out of nowhere, now just focusing on the Crystal completely. No one checked Sync 1, and he's able to get it, and that's going to be GG for Game 1 between Nebulae and BrenEsports, as BrenEsports taking the win there. And yeah, I mean, I just would have liked to see Nebulae use their CC that they had, and that's more the fact that even if they're not going to build for Echo, it makes it that much more crucial as to how they use their CC, how they use that gauntlet in conjunction with the From House Heart to really lock down the targets they needed to. But, you know, BrenEsports winning that one out. Weapon Power, Pedal coming out once again. Just good stuff.
OP, because I mean, we have talked about this before, and you know, a couple of seasons back, if you were to say Weapon Power Petal, people laugh, people call you potato, and you would not, you know, stand a chance. You would not even be able to use it in ranked or even casual matches, if that's even viable in this particular context at this point in time. But honestly, Weapon Petal has got an outrageous range, and with the amount of just basically Sorrow Blade and Tornado Trigger, you know, you can just put out already so much damage. On top of that, Mr. Jim just wants to go for the Tyrant's Monaco, and of course double Tyrant's Monaco, in fact. But of course, you know, in this particular game itself, BrenEsports have been, you know, utilizing, I don't want to say utilizing the potential of Petal, but more so of just abusing Petal all in all.
Yeah, and it's just, it really is, as you say, you know, it's one of those kind of back pocket picks that you don't really think about when you're thinking meta at the moment, but it's working out. It is working out very much so for the side of BrenEsports, who have practiced it enough. And there's the question of whether, you know, it was Sync 1 on the Weapon Power pair before. This time, would Mr. Jim be able to have this similar success? And it looked like they were able to. So, yeah, I'm not too sure what Nebulae could do for this next matchup. Do you think they just ban Pedo out completely, or is that not really on the table?
No, let me just tell you this, right? To be honest, Trophies, or rather the entirety of Nebulae, they can draft against this Petal. A few heroes work very well against a Petal, and that would be Celeste. Celeste worked decently well against a Petal, relatively well, I must say, because of your stars. You can just drop your minds, but let's not just linger and speculate because draft is ready. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into draft. So like said earlier on, the side of Nebulae, they can work around this battle, just pick up Celeste for themselves, run that weapon Idris. However, Truffy's their main carry. It's not one that can go that weapon build whatsoever. He really wants to play that mage, and that's why they don't have to insta-lock that of Idris in the first phase of bans. Because honestly, BrenEsports now on the blue side and Nebula on the red side, which means BrenEsports can easily just ban out the Celeste. That is the biggest threat to weapon battle at this point in time. But of course, in a ranked game when I'm where I'm in, and I just want to snipe someone who has been abusing that weapon battle, I'll just ban out Petal. Yeah, then I swear, I met a team that just used weapon Petal, and every single time we ban out the Petal, they dodge the match, which is quite sad, to be honest.
Wow. Well, there's no dodging in the VG8, and surprisingly, it looks like BrenEsports going to go for that Glaive ban. Not a bad ban, but not the expected ban we were looking for.
I mean, Glaive overall does decently well against a Petal as well. You can go into the backlines, remove Petal altogether without, having to deal with those pesky minions. So, Lance, guessing X on this Lance, this was something that I was talking about with Minimiter earlier on. It's just how well he is on, he plays on this Lance. And I must say, if it was yesterday's match, the MVP would definitely go on to guessing X on this Lance, and we do see that Petal being banned out from the side of BrenEsports.
Yep, I mean, turns out it makes sense if you're not going to go for the meta ban to just go for a targeted ban. So I did speculate that we could see the Petal ban coming through, but right now Celeste and Scarf still both available for either team. And what's interesting to see is there's a Lyra that's being picked up, which could suggest that they go for the likes or Celeste or Scarf more than likely, just because it's a very good hero to help out when you've got that mage hero that's standing one place while casting their spells. You can have the Imperial Sigil on top of them to help heal them up. But personally, I prefer the Grace pickup. I just prefer Grace's kit at the moment compared to Lyra. I like the more aggressive playstyle, and you can still use the heal, and when you get Echo, then you've just got multiple heals available to you, and it's usually enough for most team fights. So that's just my personal say on it, but they're going to go for the Taka pickup.
Well, Taka, it's quite unusual for the side of Nebulae. Only reason because I am going to die plays a very good Taka, but all in all, whenever you see Nebulae comes out with their team comp, what happens is that they try to protect Truffy's as carry. So it's quite surprising, and of course it is refreshing to see the Taka being picked up by the side of Nebulae. However, the side of BrenEsports, they have got a lot of options on hand, and I must agree with you as well. Grace is a much better pickup all in all. And I prefer Grace over Lyra as well, because Lyra just falls off in the late game in terms of healing. However, Grace can be easily countered, but we will be seeing a Grace when I'm talking about Grace, and we have a very, very thick comp coming out from the side of BrenEsports with that Grace, with that Lance, probably a weapon Lance, and they will settle for maybe a Celeste, if not a Scarf, for that of Blaine, which will just do very well in that early game. You get your items really quickly, you get your levels as well if you do the standard rotations that we are seeing from 2.8. But I take all of that back because BrenEsports will just settle for that Baron.
Yes, a rather confusing draft we're seeing here. Are we going to see double weapon power on the side of BrenEsports, or do you think we might see even a CP Lance or Grace?
I mean, if you were to ask me, this is purely very bad drafting coming out from the entirety of BrenEsports. I'm not even gonna try to honeycode my words or sugar drizzle it, because with a Tarka on
Honeycomb
board,
or sugar drizzle. Okay.
yeah, because I mean, with a Tarka on board, we saw it in the previous game between Nebulae and Infamous, if I remember correctly. In the previous game, the first semifinals, the last set. So we saw Chingy on that Tarka just owning Baron to hell and back, right? There was no way Baron could breathe whatsoever. Oh, it was BrenEsports. Yeah, BrenEsports going up against Infamous. Was it? Yeah, Infamous. And honestly, Tarka just does so well bursting Baron down. Even if you have the heal coming up from Grace, Tarka's S1W2 inflicts mortal wound, and with that mortal wound inflicted, your healing will be nerfed, will be stunned by a third. And that is quite an amount, unless of course Grace builds the very early Shatter Glass into an Echo, which means you'll be an off tank, not a true captain that is really, really tanky and can just take a lot of beating and abuse. And with that in mind, BrenEsports is just so very confusing, like you say. It's a very peculiar, very strange drafting method coming out from BrenEsports.
Yes, very strange indeed, and we'll have to see how it plays out. But I mean, if a team's gonna do it, BrenEsports surprised us initially when they went up against Infamous by picking up that weapon power pedal, and it almost worked out for them. In a few games it did. I mean, they pushed it through to the third match, and they played very well through two of those matches. I believe they picked up that weapon power pedal, and I think that they don't have it here because it is banned out. But they've gone for something else that we're not too sure about as shoutcasters. Let's be honest.
Well, okay.
You called it a bad draft. But I'm going to put my hope in BrenEsports and see what they can do.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Guessing X is an amazing Lance, but we'll not be seeing his Lance. We don't have that honor to just, reign in his glory of Lance glory and that Gideon wall that he constantly put out in a very crucial timing, saving his teammates. But all in all, we have Grace. We have Guessing X on that Grace. And that means Sync 1 will be on that on-hit Lance, if I'm not wrong. I mean, at this point in time, it is only pure speculations. I will not know what will come out from BrenEsports. Probably an on-hit Lance just to balance out. If not, then, a tension bow into double Sorrow Blade Lance that hurts a lot as well. So BrenEsports may just want to go for that. And honestly, BrenEsports.com, they have got a lot of burst damage. They have got a lot of early game burst, short-term burst damage. Whereas for the side of Nebulae, they are very sustained heavy heroes. You have the Lyra that can provide sustain. You have Tarka, which is very weird to say for Tarka, that will eventually build that Aftershock if he's not going for the Shatter Glass build. And then if not, then if he's going for that Aftershock build, then he has got to sustain on top of that as well. He has got a Kaku to just regain back the lost health in any team fights and then rejoin his team again. And of course, trophies on that CP Black Feather, I reckon. Oh wait. Okay.
Yes.
No, because I just thought of something, but I Angry You Die taking a lot of damage. Just speculate. I mean, it is just pure speculation at this point in time. But trophies play a lot of majors, so...
Ooh, and there's going to be the route into the stun onto Trophies, who gets out there by jumping to a minion, barely getting out for safety. And BrenEsports putting a lot of pressure down with their 3-man rotation up there. And wait, minion candies coming out from the side of Nebulae, actually. Maybe used a bit earlier than they would have liked to, but right now, the pressure being put on in lane here by Mr. Jim and Guessing, I really love it, and this is what I love about aggressive Grace gameplay.
Yep, and the thing that I wanted to point out earlier on is that trophies, it is pure speculation at this point in time because a lot of Tarkas do buy double weapon blade, but seeing the current build on Iron Gyudai and trophies, I'm not surprised if trophies would just settle for the CP Black Feather, and Iron Gyudai would just go for the weapon, Aftershock. No, not Aftershock. Sorry, Tension Bow. Taka, and then okay, no, I take all of that back. Vainglory just bought an old card, which means he will go for Storm Crown. That means it will be an Aftershock Storm Crown. CP Taka and the trophies will go for the weapon. There you go, the heavy steel.
Yeah, they're just messing with you, Luxura, just like Sync 1 was messing with Nebulae, manages to get the steal on that mid-treant, and yeah, I mean, I'm still going to hold my hope in BrenEsports' hands here, and we'll see whether your predictions of, you know, even though Nebulae got supposedly the better draft, if they're going to be able to pull through with the team comp that they've got set for them, because they do have a good engage with the Black Feather and the Taka, and they have a lot of damage there, especially they're not deciding to go for that weapon power Taka, and they're going for the CP instead, which is a great choice because CP just mounts enemy heroes, especially like Baron, if they're able to get on top of him, or Lance, but Lance a bit tankier, maybe not so much with the weapon power build this time, but we'll see how it works out. And there's a bit of poke damage going up in lane right now, and a bit of a fight going on in jungle, so a fairly aggressive early game for both teams, as neither have got that first blood yet, and they're both making the rotation down to this mid-map, and it looks like it could go over to the side of Nebulae. Sync 1 going very low, one more on point would take him out, but the first one misses, but it looks like the broken heart stacks will remain, and Nebulae should be able to do it, but no! It looks like Baron able to steal the first blood away just seconds before them, and both these teams going fairly even so far.
Yeah, but with that, Trophies was able to go into the back lines and steal some farm. Manages to get both backs away from BrenEsports as well. So looking like a very good day for Nebula at least. Although they are slightly, you know, under gold with 8.9 over to 9.5k gold for the side of BrenEsports. But overall, I guess it's a decently fair exchange. And Taka at this point in time don't have that much damage unless consider the basic attack as a lot of damage, but all in all, he really needs an early aftershock. If not, then Storm Crown first, who will deal a lot of damage onto that of Mr. Jim on the Baron, because we all know Baron would not want to build a lot of defense, as with Trophies as well.
Yep, and there's going to be the engage coming out from the side of Nebulae, but you're right, Taka just not doing enough damage, and I'm starting to wonder if they're not going for the early aftershock and they haven't solved the double weapon blades. Will they go for an early tension bow and aftershock and then Storm Crown?
Well, hopefully not. I mean, only know, okay, because this game is just so strange. It started off strange with the drafting, and there was a lot of speculation. It allows the casters to just put in more thought and a lot of talking, let's say, as compared to the first game at least. So with this, you know, we do see Vainglory actually picking up the early energy battery as well. So
there's going to be the engage onto Trophies, and they get him very low. However, Lyra is there, but it's another 5 seconds until the Imperial Sigil's up. Taka gonna jump onto the backline, just being a bit of a nuisance at this point. And right now, Trophies has no more of those Rose offensives to get away, so it needs to be careful. Vainglory going to try jump onto Mr. Jim, but really not doing anything there. There's going to be Sync 1 on that weapon power. Lance, however, showing him what damage is, and then they're going to focus onto Truffless next, and right now BrenEsports just being very aggressive overall as they pick up another kill, and it's leaving Truffless alone to protect this turret. It looks like Black Feather might be back soon, but will it be soon enough, as this turret is taking a beating, and it doesn't look like it. They're going to be able to get away with the first turret of the game, also picking up 2 kills in that earlier fight. BrenEsports looking very good, especially with the whole aggressive team comp they've got going on for themselves.
Yep, I mean, for a weapon barrier, I mean, we've seen BrenEsports playing as well, and in accordance to the previous series that they played, they are usually generally the passive team. But now, because they find out and they are showing the entirety of Nebulae what damage is, and I quote you, they are looking just very strong now. Granted, the weapon ban, the petal ban on Nebulae was a decently good ban, but BrenEsports, you know, you cannot just give them 2 roamers to work with protecting Mr. Jim. I mean, Sync 1 landing those very
Oh, yeah, there's going to be the engage. They might be able to find the kill onto Mr. Jim this time. Iron Cannon getting trophies very low. However, he's able to Rose offensive over the wall and get out there, but it looks like he ran into Guessing, and Guessing might go for the chase. They have the Retribution. They might be able to get the kill, but there's the Imperial Sigil, keeping them barely alive, and they're just baiting the side of BrenEsports in here into a 3v1, a fight very much in the favor of Nebulae, because Trophy is going to be able to have more than enough health by now, and just going to be able to stack the damage up eventually. And you can see, you know, Angry Dice is starting off with a Clockwork actually, and now going for the Heavy Prism is going to start doing a bit of damage here.
Yep, there you go. So this is the build that I was talking about, that Clockwork into Shatterglass, although I personally would have preferred the Shatterglass. So, you know, when you come up for the early gank, you would just do a lot of damage on your Etsuretsu into a Chitin and your basic attack as well. But quite an interesting build up coming out from Iron Dai with that Stormguard banner just to help the early game, you know, early game clear speed. But with double weapon power, double weapon blade, at least you actually have got the early game clear anyways. So I do not understand the Stormguard banner build all in all, but I guess at this point in time it is working out for them. BrenEsports really have to be cautious at this point in time. They can't just jump in anymore. They know they have got damage, right? So Mr. Jim has got damage, the entirety of BrenEsports have got damage in fact, but that Arcane passive was just used very haphazardly, followed by a Bright Bulwark as well, not knowing that BrenEsports can easily just run out of your wombo. But so many buts.
Yeah, so many butts, and it looks like they're chasing after Graces right now, but there's going to be the turnaround on Angry Dai. A bit of punishment there, but Iron Cannon placement, it was so close. A very good guess, but not good enough, as Angry Dai is going to be able to escape from that one. But I wouldn't be surprised if BrenEsports tried to push for a fight now that they have the advantage. Lyra was split away from the rest of them. They could have gone in, but instead going to stick around as a team and just farm up a bit more. And I'm not too sure about this. Of course, Mr. Jim will get stronger as the game goes on, but this Taka will get harder and harder to kill. You're not going to get opportunities as easy as that once he builds up the Storm Crown, but it looks like they could be going for a Shatterglass second instead, which makes a lot of sense with the amplified damage on the Clockwork and just being able to jump in there, and more so you turn the tides around and let Nebulae play the aggressor team.
Definitely. So with that Shatterglass build on Iron Dai, he will be putting out a lot more damage, unlike Bren Chong would expect.
Yep, and there's going to be the fight breaking out. Sync 1 going in, being able to pick up the kill. Meanwhile, it's going to be Truffy's and Mr. Jim who traded it out there. Mr. Jim going to fall, but Truffy's trying his best in the 2v1. There's the Holy Nova, and it's going to be enough to let Sync 1 get the poke in, get the ace, and we're going to push on to the second turret. However, they took a bit long. Iron Dai is back up. They're just going to push the aced up minions onto the turret and then turn around. Now that Taka is back in the wait. No one has taken the gold mine just yet. However, there is vision on it from the side of Nebula. Oh, from the side of yeah, Bren. I was wondering why it didn't get popped when Grace walked on it, but I forgot that they were on the blue team.
Yep, and there is one thing to point out as well. Although Taka has got damage, right? He can generally just go in, try his bestest to burn Mr. Jim or burst Mr. Jim down, but the amount of damage that Mr. Jim is putting out in that particular team fight, we saw Trophies and Iron Dai immediately taken down to an 8th of health, and from then on it was just easy cleanup for Sync 1 missing that impale there.
Yep, and we see the engage coming here. There's a Bright Bulwark to try and either lock down or keep away BrenEsports. They're not too sure right now. Both teams just going back and forth here with a bit of poke damage. You can see Bren maybe looking for the follow-up, but they're just going to keep the pressure up on this lane.
Yep, and I guess double, or rather protect Mr. Jim Cobb does work out all in all. in favor of BrenEsports because of the amount of dives that's coming out from the side of Nebulae. If they do not protect Mr. Jim, and they are not doing an exceptional job, mind you, I just need to put it out there because Mr. Jim is constantly the first one to go down. If Guessing had got that echo earlier on, probably Mr. Jim would not have suffered a 2 death. But all in all, the amount of CCs coming out from the side of Chong is just a pain to deal with for Nebulae. Nebulae needs that Crucible ASAP, and of course Iron Gyuzai as well needs to use those Chitin to just dodge out all of the CCs that's coming out from the side of BrenEsports. Not the easiest thing to do as well, although the entirety of BrenEsports, or rather Nebulae, if you realize, they've got skills, they've got abilities to actually dodge out CCs, right? You got trophies with that Rose Offensive, but at this point in time...
Yeah, but we are going to see another team fight break out, and Taka all on top of Baron right now, and soon to be trophies as well. There's the double Divine Intervention, but it's not going to be enough, and Guessing is just going to get jumped on top of. Meanwhile, Sync1 trying to escape. There's the Arcane Passage over the wall. Does he have the Impale? Ooh, he's able to combat roll over that one, and should be able to find the safety of his turret, perhaps. Instead, going to go up into this brush, but if Taka spots him out, could be bad. Looks like Iron Gyuzai did not, however, and is going to turn their attention towards Goldmine with the rest of their team, but a fairly decent cleanup by the side of Nebulae, and there's really nothing they can do to keep the enemy off Mr. Jim. Of course, you could try get Guessing to peel for them with the Holy Nova, the Benediction jumping in there, but I'm not sure. Divine Intervention is not cutting it. If anything, right now Taka is cutting everything with the X-Retsu, and the Mortal Wound is going to be cutting that healing down. So yeah, Nebulae definitely with the better team comp. I had hope for Bren, and I haven't lost it just yet. I'm just wondering how they're gonna keep Mr. Jim alive.
Just slightly slipping, I see. But all in all, I personally think that if Sync1, or rather Guessing, on that Grace, if Guessing was put on that Lance and Sync1 on that Grace, would have worked out a little better. All in all, that is my personal thoughts, because Grace can just opt for the on-hit build, get an echo, just go full on protect Mr. Jim, but another fight might break out with an Retsu going in, or rather Trophies goes in with a Faint of Heart, but they will, and they might just reset. All in all, but I need to finish my point first. So had they just swap it around and play it so that, you know, Sync1 is on that Grace, plays that on hit Grace, will do a lot of damage, but a fight will be breaking out at this point in time.
Yep, and we see right now that it's actually going in favor of BrenEsports for this time. Taka did not get onto Mr. Jim like he wanted to, and there's going to be Divine Intervention keeping Mr. Jim alive while Black Feather's on the backline trying to get to them, and Sync1 also receiving Divine Intervention to keep them all healed up. And BrenEsports looking so clean throughout that fight. They managed to keep everyone alive, get the ace, push onto the turret, and now working their way onto this Kraken. That is the Bren that I had hope in.
I guess you are climbing back that, you know, that hope cliff that you were slipping from. But like I say, had they swapped roles, it would have been a little easier. Grace going for that on-hit build with that Shatter Glass, and on top of that as well, and Echo, and maybe Double Fountain for just to protect Mr. Jim. You will not have as much damage as Sync1 can put out with those Impales. But all in all, I personally think it will be more worth it, because that way Mr. Jim would have survived a lot more team fights than he has now. But of course, with this particular team comp and team lineup coming up from BrenEsports, they have got a lot of damage, a lot of burst damage, and we do not see a single ounce of defense whatsoever on Iron Gyuzai.
Yep, and it's going to probably stay like that because they don't have much time to make a change now as Kraken pushes up to the Anchor turret, and it goes down within seconds. Ion Cannon used as well. I mean, you might not get a kill with it at this point, so why not use it on objectives instead? And you can see Trophies trying to look for the backline here. As long as Guessing has used the Holy Nova a bit early, I was going to say stays with Mr. Jim, they should be fine, but Mr. Jim just jump jets back from that puts the damage down onto our Angry Die, and he gets deleted instantly. Now Truffy's looking for some damage onto Sync 1. There's the Fountain of Renewal, trying to keep the rest of Nebulae alive, but the turret will not be able to get healed. No, that is not going to work, Truffless, and right now we see Kraken, the whole team of BrenEsports pushing onto this crystal. They're going to be able to take it. It's going to be GG for Game 2, and I believe the third place spot going over to BrenEsports.
Yep, it is a third place spot going over to the side of BrenEsports. BrenEsports definitely showing that they can do without a weapon battle, as long as Mr. Jim is kept alive, and they have got very, very tanky walls to just keep that, objective secured. When I say objective, I really refer to Mr. Jim, because he is basically the turret that just puts out so much damage all in all. Angry Die, I understand the thought process that went into not building a single defense item going up against Mr. Jim, because Mr. Jim has got a slumbering husk as well. So Angry Die really has to stay in the fight for a tad longer. I would have preferred if Angry Die just rushed the Shatter Glass and then a Clockwork afterwards. That way, the moment he gets his edge threat to, he can go up into lane and put a lot of pressure onto Mr. Jim, and that way Trophies would have an easier time as well. All in all, we see the build coming out from Trophies as well. Double defense against, just weapon power. We have the Atlas, we have the Metal Jacket, and yet Trophies can just go down in a snap of a finger. Right, so anyways, good game, well played, and of course congratulations to the side of BrenEsports on clinching the third place spot of this particular week, and this split as well. No, this week, just this week.